here to examine.
Right.
I got the whole list here of all the names that end in Yahoo, and it's got the. It talks about a chapter here about the U, V, or W, and it's got some evidence there to consider, and it's got a whole list here of names. The Hebrew base ends with an A, and the Greek base and the Due, they all end with an E. And it's quite a list to consider. And so, in the Yahweh thing.
Right.
And they say, the evidence is from Greek, so. Yeah, and so there's a lot here that I never touched on.
Right.
And when Elijah said, how long halt ye between two opinions? If YHWH be Elohim, follow him. But in the Hebrew it says, but if Ha Baal. It doesn't say it in the text. It just says, but if Baal, then follow him.
Oh, yeah.
But in Hebrew it's Ha Baal, which means the Lord. Kind of interesting.
For years the Catholics used Yahweh, but now the Pope has banned the use of it.
Yeah.
But when I studied, I could prove Yah, Y-H.
Yeah.
Like Kumbaya, Hallelujah, But the ooh, I definitely see that in the full names.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. Well, it's kind of interesting. And the Spanish people, they call it Creator. For God. But if you look up Acts 14:13, that's the Greek word behind Jupiter. I mean, you know what I'm saying? All the gods of the nations are idols, but Yahuwah made the heavens, So all these gods in Christianity, they actually came from ancient gods.
Brian, I asked one of the officials at one of the synagogues one time, I said, why, Brother Goldberg, why do y'all use the pagan names for the months? He said, well, when we were in Babylon, we picked them up and we never got rid of. So I think a lot of this is pollution.
It is.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just not the only thing, which one is right. That's the thing, So we're trying to get out of, saying the names of the days of the week,
Right.
It's hard and nobody else is practicing it,
Yeah.
But, we
Tell them the fourth day of the week.
even the days of the month, the name of the months, Yeah, we say it sometime, but we gotta practice it more.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I'm guilty of that too. But I always say Sabbath.
Yeah.
Trying to make them think there's a difference between Sunday and
Oh
Sabbath.
yeah, I definitely say Sabbath. Yeah.
I never call it Sabbath day.
But then even sometimes when you say Sabbath, they'll say, oh yeah, well I go to church on Sunday. No, that's not Sabbath.
Well, when you say the days of the week, then they don't know what you're saying. You have to explain it. It takes up extra time.
It takes up extra time.
Yeah.
But it gives you a chance to witness too.
Yeah, it gives a chance to witness, but sometimes people are in a hurry and say, well, I gotta go, and then, well, when I'm gonna see you again,
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, how am I gonna handle this? They already rushing, So it's, but we do try to witness and try to get out of it.
Yeah, even this word here. We pronounce it God. But in Isaiah 65:11, it's a Babylonian deity. It's pronounced the same, even though it has an A in there.
When I went to the family Christian bookstore yesterday, I saw a book that said, I am.
It's for you.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And they were talking about the, names and stuff. But I don't know that they had them right.
I sleep like this.
Well, I wanted to give a brief commercial, I guess, for my book, Foundation of the World. We've only touched on a few pieces this week, but there's a lot in here. I only have one copy left, and whoever wants it the most, I don't really want to give this one away because it's not always one I don't have to sell it. So whoever wants it the most can, I guess, get it. But I just wanted to share briefly what's in here because it's valuable information on the feast days. It covers that St. Patrick kept the feast days. This is a real historical quote here. And not just Patrick, but the whole British Isles kept all the festivals and the Waldensians. And this is historical information that's in here. And it covers things like in the controversial texts like Ephesians and Galatians, you know, where it says, I'm afraid of you, you observe days, months, times, and years.
The book you have.
Foundation of the World.
Oh, okay.
This is my last copy.
That's,
I got to go get a bunch more printed up,
No, I
and that
thought
takes a lot of money.
that's
So
great.
I've been kind of putting it off, I guess, until I run out. And then it'll kind of set me back a little bit to go get some more. But I need to do it. But I have one copy left, so whoever wants it the most, can end up getting it. But in Galatians 4:10, he mentions, I'm afraid of you. You observe days, months, times, and years. But actually, Paul is referring to a quote from the Torah that says not to observe times. And he's talking about the pagan holidays and stuff. So I bring that out in here, and several quotes from. So he's not going to be observing the feast days and then condemning himself when he says don't observe times. So he's obviously talking about something different.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will point it out, well, this is what Paul says, we're not supposed to worry about those days.
Well, Brother Wood yesterday called Paul ignorant. When I revealed to him Acts 20 verse 6 and Acts of the Apostles 3:91, he said, well, Paul was ignorant. He's going back to Jerusalem. I said, well, he kept the Passover before he went back to Jerusalem. Well, he was ignorant. He went, Paul wasn't ignorant. Paul wasn't ignorant. And my neighbor, the one I was saying that she graduated at Oakwood, and she's nearly 70 years old, and she said Paul was ignorant. And when he kept the feast, he was ignorant. Paul wasn't ignorant.
No, he wasn't. He was very learned. Yeah.
God never would choose someone and will not use it later.
And it covers the understanding of Colossians 2:14 through 17. We touched a little bit on it, on prophecy of things to come, that quote from Irenaeus. So it's got that, and it's got feast days done away with by whom? Messiah or anti-Messiah? And that's an important thing to understand. It's an important point.
Yeah.
Because it's an identification. Who changed times and laws is the anti-Messiah.
Yeah, that's when I use robberies for the home, change of the Sabbath as much as possible. To show them that, same one that changed the Sabbath. They the one who took away the feast day.
As a matter of fact, I got the quote right here.
Yeah.
And let me read it to you here. It's got a photocopy of the letter by this Roman Catholic priest. Here it is. And we're familiar with it, I think most of us Adventists. This is a copy of the letter written by a Roman Catholic priest. And he says in here, and this is in Drama of the Ages. You familiar with that old Adventist book? Drama of the Ages? It's an old Adventist book. That's where I got this from.
Okay.
I didn't actually say that in here, but I just copied the letter out of the book. I think it's been over 50 years. So, but he says in here, the Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but also the other Jewish festivals. And then I type it out in English where you can actually read it a little bit better. But it's really the feast days of the beast days.
Yeah, you got it. I know a lady in class yesterday was asking me last night, she said, well, did you have a good Easter? And she's one that you can talk to, you know what I mean? Because you don't say this to everybody.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Easter is really pagan. She goes, yeah, I know it's pagan. She said, all the holidays are pagan. I said, that's right, except the ones that God ordained, And of all things, she's Catholic. And there are she was talking about some of the young people are coming into Catholicism and all this. But there was this one woman that said, well, my husband's Greek Orthodox. And yeah, the real days did fall close to the false days this time.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of people know what they're doing, but they don't want to change.
My brother Solomon went to Ohio. He called me yesterday because he's going back. Last night, actually, he was in New Mexico. So he went to preach in Ohio, and he says that he's coming back very sad because he find out so many people, they are preaching everywhere, not only there, and totally confusing the people. They don't believe in Holy Spirit. They don't believe in the feasts. I don't know why these people are going inside these places to talk about this. I don't know how they let them allowed to be there. So we're supposed to be together in the same spirit and the same wish and the same belief, you know. And he is very disappointed because he drive so far.
He drove all the way from California.
And he was the only one who believes in tabernacles and statues and well, some of them too. There were like maybe 30 people. And he was very sad.
He made that long drive, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So he dropped them off in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we went and picked them up. But they didn't want to go to Ohio, so he dropped them off in Tulsa, and he continued on to Ohio. Long trip, almost a long trip for nothing. Well, you never know whose heart's going to be touched, but...
Oh, I've done things like that before. I know
But
exactly.
he gave a good message for many people there because they were very confused because some people they get there, it's like a... And he sent a very nice message saying that we will be judged from the ones that are coming to places and telling not the truth. You know, and because they're getting more confusing than the teaching. And he says that his friend from Washington and another place too, they complain the same thing. So we have to be careful. He says, you know, just be careful because there's a lot of people are introducing to the real ones who believes and follow Yeshua to trying to confuse us.
I know, yeah. Well, we're infiltrated too.
Yeah.
These gatekeepers are infiltrated just as much as everybody else, probably even more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and more, like you said.
But God says in Matthew 24, you know, will be so many that they will come and even they will betray to the ones they really trust.
You know that passage in Joel where, take a look at it, where he said, blow up the trumpet in Zion, sound of alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahuwah cometh. It's not yet. This is Joel 2. It goes on. And says, therefore also now, saith Yahuwah, turn ye even to with all your heart, with all your fasting and weeping and mourning, and rend your heart and not your garments. And turn unto Yahuwah. It goes on down to verse 16, well, in verse 15. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck the breast, and the bridegroom, and go forth from his chamber, and the bride out of her closet, and let the priests and ministers of Yahuwah weep between the porch and the altar. And let them say, spare thy people, O Yahuwah, and give not thine heritage to reproach. And you know, he's actually quoting from Deuteronomy. They may come and hear all the words of the Torah. Let me find that quote from you in Deuteronomy. I'm kind of rusty here. I should have wrote it down right there. You'll see it when I read it here. That goes. Yeah, okay, here it is from Deuteronomy 31, 12 and 13. Gather the people together, men and women and children, and thy strangers that's within your gates, that you may hear, that you may learn, and fear Yahuwah your Elohim, and observe to do all the words of his Torah, this Torah, and their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim, as long as you live in the land where you go over Jordan to possess it. And that's what Joel was referring to. Because the day of Yahuwah is at hand, and there's fixing to be an exodus to the promised land. And so it covers that. And the latter rain, Moses said, my doctrine shall drop as the rain. My speech shall distill as the dew. So, and it covers the topic of the two witnesses, how to calculate the feast days. So it cut, John Vandenberg has a great book on the feast days as far as promoting it, but he's got a lot of elementary white quotes. I'm not against that or anything, but this kind of focuses on a different aspect from the scriptures alone.
Can I ask you, Deuteronomy 31 what?
Deuteronomy 31, 12 and 13.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but because this is very beautiful.
And how to find the spring and fall equinox. Most people don't know how to do that.
Right.
And how to find the summer and winter solstice. It's not all that necessary, but it's, And it talks about the supper in Bethany, which we covered that. And the 10th of Abib, the lamb was chosen. And between the two evenings, a whole chapter on that. We covered the 3 days and 3 nights. And the wave sheaf, how to count that, counting to Pentecost. It even has a chapter on the lunar Sabbaths. I call them the loony Sabbaths.
Yeah, I've been invited to go to San Diego for to adore the moons and things, and so I'm here. God only knows why I'm here.
I'm not sure if most people know the concept of the Queen of Heaven, but in Genesis 1, it calls the sun and moon rulers.
What?
It calls the sun and moon rulers.
Oh.
The sun to rule the day, and the moon and the stars to rule by night.
Yeah.
And so pagans, they kind of picked up on sun worship, right? We're kind of familiar with this a little bit. And their deity, the sun, sort of like represents the deity, sort of. And even the Savior said, "I'm the light of the world." Well, what's the light of our world? It's the sun. And the Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings. There's healing in the sunshine. But these are called rulers, the rulers of the day, and they also rule the year together. So the moon was considered the queen of heaven, and whenever you look at the moon in the Bible, it's always referred to as her, and whenever you look at the sun, it's always called he.
Yeah. In my country, even now, all the Indians, it's like about 75% people in my country, they believe that the sun is the husband and the moon is the wife.
Yeah.
And they make all these festivities all the time. And they drink alcohol, pure alcohol. They get totally drunk, and sometimes they die because it's too much for the body.
Yeah.
And then it's when men and women have relation, and then they don't know who is the father, And then comes Carnival, which is February, and they say, oh, el Pepino. Pepino is a guy who put this costume, very funny and ugly, and they say, oh, he's the father. Because they don't know who's the father, the child.
That's sad.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, all that's pagan worship. But there are truths about the sun and moon. They were considered rulers.
Well, you remember Joseph? in
Yes,
his dream?
Joseph's dream. Yes.
And what did his dad say? Well, are you saying, your mother and father are going to bow down?
Exactly.
When Joseph said the sun and the moon bowed down to me?
Exactly. Yeah, Jacob made that connection.
Or Jacob?
Yeah, he made the connection of Joseph's dream, and he recognized that he was considered the sun in this picture, and his mother was the moon, and his brethren were the 11 stars, and they bowed to him. And so there you see the moon connection with female, and it's true. When Ellen White said that her writings are lesser light, people are going to go way out there and it just hits the fan and goes everywhere, but the moon and the sun are not the same thing.
Right.
No, they're not.
Right.
I mean, it kind of is, because the moon is reflecting the sunlight. I got that, but I still, if I was to talk to Dennis Prevey, for example, I would say the moon is not the sun. The scriptures are the sun. Her writings are the moon. They're reflecting the light of the scriptures, So, if you understand these things in context, it helps a whole lot. Because they're basically making her the Third Testament. Which I don't think is a balance at all. We're supposed to be sola scriptura. The Bible alone. Now, I think she helps illuminate the scriptures, explain the scriptures, but she's not the scriptures,
Right. No, what the thing is that, when we speak the scripture and then we use spirit prophets to back it up, we're still speaking the scriptures, but
Well, I don't have a problem with that or anything. I'm just...
Yeah, and no, I'm not reproving you, we're speaking the scripture, but when people start to say, well, did Sister White do it? If Sister White didn't do it, we don't have to do it. Same thing that Davidian said about Brother Halter. If Brother Halter didn't do it, I don't have to do it. Well, how come Brother Halter didn't have a beard? Who are you following? You understand what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
But if she in harmony with the Bible, and you use her word for understanding, because all of us don't have that talent to word things in such a way to bring it across. So God used her to word it in such a way to bring the Bible across to us with understanding. Because anytime you read the Bible, it needs explanation to your kids, to us, to anybody. So God used her to explain it so everybody can be on the same page. So it is, in a sense, the Bible, but don't take it above the Bible.
Right,
But
exactly.
when people don't know how to use her writing, and then they set her above Christ, that's following a false god.
Yeah.
She didn't make herself a false god, but they making her a false god, and they're in danger of putting her above Christ.
Yeah, it's not quite the balance there. The sun, it comes out and it has a lot of heat, and we feel it. We get scorched by it pretty much. The moon is not that way. I'm thinking of Psalms 19, where it says, "Nothing is hid from the heat thereof." And I also compare the Bible to like the Constitution. I try to explain it to historians. That's the way I say. The Bible is like the Constitution, and that which explains the Constitution is not the Constitution. There's a lot of court cases and stuff that will explain and expound the principles of the Constitution, but they are not the Constitution.
Exactly.
So I kind of see Ellen White's writings that way too. Like explaining the Constitution, but she herself is not the Constitution.
Yeah, I always use the Ten Commandments as the table of contents.
Yeah.
And the statute and judgment is the book.
Yeah.
That's the term I always use on the same page.
In Revelations 12:1, and there appeared a great wonder. I think so many people overlook a lot of the meaning to this verse. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried. I mean, there is, this says so much about the gospel, but people just, pie in the sky.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah. And others have written books on the feast days too, and they're good, and I like them. I think Louis Manillo was one of the first.
Yeah, I found that quote since we're on that conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
Here in Signs of the Time, June 8, 1876, they got a line through it. They took it out. That quote that's in that Louis Manillo put in that book.
Oh, this is his book. Okay.
Yeah, and on the which one?
You want me to read it?
Yeah, since you're on that
Okay.
subject, this one here.
Okay.
The whole quote is not in there. We found somebody that had the book
So long years.
yeah, but in the Signs of the Time, they're taking it out. They just got a line through there. I mean, it's not printed in the book.
Okay.
They're taking it out.
Okay.
Shall we?
This is from Signs of the Times, June 8, 1876, and Sister Davis has some of those big books.
I got it right here.
Oh, you got it
But
there.
they got a line through it. They didn't put it in the book.
Oh, okay.
Did you find it in
It's not in there. They didn't print it in
Yeah.
there. They got the date, but they ain't got the print.
Did you check through to see if the dates were there?
Yeah, I looked at that. It's
Oh.
not there. We got a newer set, and it's not in there. They take
Got a lot
it
of good stuff in here.
But we checked the books, and we had an older CD-ROM in 2005, and the older CD-ROM had it on there, and somehow that we moved and traveled, and we lost that CD-ROM, so we got a new Ellen G. White CD-ROM. It's not on there anymore.
Mm. And what's the title of it?
Uh,
Is it shown there? Or did that just show the page?
it just got Jeremiah, and then it's got 4T, 177, and 185. So far I got 4T, but I ain't found the same thing that's in that book.
4T, and what was the other one? Mark 4T.
It just got 4T, you know, and it's got page 177 through 185.
Oh, that's the only reference.
Yeah. But we found it, and even just last year, we found a lady up in Missouri that got all, I didn't even know it, it's all 8 volumes of the Signs of the Time. And she read the whole quote, and the whole quote is there.
Right.
So what you're going to read from there?
And she's got a lot of good stuff here. Ellen White does.
No,
She
just
says,
that one paragraph.
Yeah, I'll read
You
it.
can read whatever you want to read, but you know. it's up to you.
I'll get to it.
Okay, all right.
She says here, counsels to parents, teachers, and students, which I haven't heard of that book, but
Yeah,
She
we got
says-
that book.
okay. Shall we not keep the holy festivals unto Elohim? Shall we not know that we have some enthusiasm in his service? Let the school and the church henceforth have festivals of rejoicing unto Yahuwah. And then this is what Sister Davis was trying to share last night with Brother Woods. If the children of Israel needed the benefit of these holy convocations in their time, how much more do we need them in these last days of
Hallelujah.
peril and conflict? Testimonies for the Church, Volume 6, 39 and 40. Now this is a quote that Brother Joseph was wanting to share. This excellent meeting, with all its labor of preparation, anxiety, preaching, hearing, exhorting, confession of sins and the want of Messiah, its tears, deliverances, and joys, is now past. Those parents who brought their children to the meeting and saw them converted and take the baptismal vow are now glad that they brought them. Those who did not bring their children regretted their mistake. These annual feasts of tabernacles are gatherings of the greatest importance, and there should be a general turning out of all who may be benefited. That's great.
Yes.
The original
Yes,
quote
very
said 38 children got baptized.
38.
38. Mm-hmm.
I guess this is by James White,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says quoted from Ellen White in The Lonely Years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my daughter was baptized, her and the Bueller girl were baptized in the creek at the feast.
That's what we passed out. in
When we
California.
first, my husband and I first married, we didn't keep Christmas, Easter, Halloween, but we didn't know there was anything else to keep. So we just didn't do anything. But then when a friend, and it was at the Sweeney's, was, you know, where we met you,
Yeah.
was the first feast we went to.
Oh.
And we studied it, and so we started taking our children to the feast. And, I mean, they loved it. They simply loved it. Because there's a vacuum there. If you give up the bad and you don't know what the good is, it's like, okay, what do we do? You know, it's like giving up Sunday and you don't keep Sabbath. You know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The last one. Yeah. So I think it's on my phone. I just thought about it. I'm not sure. I downloaded Ellsworth writing on my phone. I think it's on my phone. I think it's on Jackie's phone. But sometimes you download her writing, you don't always get the same thing. But it's in there.
And this book has a chapter, Foundation of the World has a chapter in here about October 22, 1844, and it basically argues in favor of how the Adventist pioneers were providentially led to calculate the feast days, more or less, and because they tried to extend the year of 1843 as long as they could, and it ended, you know, with Adar. And so they were saying, well, when do we start the new year at 1844, the scriptural year? So they were looking into it, and they extended on down past the vernal equinox to the new moon, and that year the new moon showed up the day before the vernal equinox, but the year wasn't expired yet. It was the next day it expired. So they had to wait a whole another month, and it really established us as a people of how to calculate the feast days. And the pastor said last night that you know, they were done away with at the cross and all. But if that's true, then we have no business looking at 1844 as any kind of fulfillment of prophecy, because if it's done away with, it's done away with. It can't have any prophetic significance if it's done away with at the cross. So really, October 22, 1844, and the investigative judgment establishes the feast days more than anything, you know. So it's got a chapter in here on that.
Sounds like y'all had a lively day yesterday.
We did.
Oh, it was really lively.
We really did. Yeah, we got into about the trio on the phone conference call.
Yeah, on the conference call at 5 o'clock.
This is
With
interesting.
Washington.
This is interesting, and you're right.
And after he made his presentation,
Oh yeah,
Sister
she
Jackson
read
had
it
made
last,
some
well,
comments
she didn't read
and
it
asked
to everybody, she read
questions.
it to me.
And boy, and it did with Trinity, and
This is your
it went
right
on.
First.
on.
Well, I got out volume 7A and shared with him about the angel of mercy, and
No,
that just
I
went
got one
way
just
over.
like
When?
You know.
But the thing about it is, they both believe they're non-Trinity believers.
Oh, okay.
That's Sister Jackson, and so is he.
So am I.
There's more than three.
I believe in three persons, but I don't believe in the Trinity.
Right,
You know.
right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
This is very interesting.
right.
I need to show my
Yeah,
kids.
you know, I got something I want to share after this meeting is over here, but you know, I want Brother Brent to be in here too. You know, it's very important. But
Brother who, baby?
Brother Brent, I want him to be in here
Oh,
too.
yeah.
You know, it's not long. It's just a thought provoking to the importance of why. You know. So.
Well, also, and towards the end of this book, it's kind of like three little chapters in one, and it goes into when the Savior was actually born. He was actually born at the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I picked this up in Desire of Ages, where Ellen White quotes John 1:14 from, I think it's the RV, the Revised Version, and she says, "The Word was made flesh and tabernacled among us." And she's actually, that's what the Greek word is for dwelt. That he tabernacled. It's tabernacles in Greek. So that was a big hint. Of course, if you do the calculating, he died at Passover. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you back up 3.5 years to his baptism, which would have had to been in the fall of the year, Luke said he began to be about 30 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, It's pretty easy to figure
Yeah,
out.
the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the 7th month, and and he came to tabernacle among us, so it makes sense.
And I think John the Baptist was born at the time of the Passover.
Exactly, 6
So-
months before. Yeah, and they asked him, "Are you the Messiah?" Because they thought Messiah might be born at Passover. He said, "I'm not."
So that will be what month?
Passover was in,
October?
no, April.
April.
Yeah, for Passover.
Oh,
But,
so,
but when Yeshua was born,
yeah, yeah.
it would be in the autumn.
Because I sent a video to my family and friends yesterday, and Margarita was taking. So by mistake, I said, "Oh, we are here and celebrating the newborn Joshua," and then I don't know what I said completely different times. And now I can see that these other times I said by mistake, but it was not a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm very, very happy when I see very.
This is a quote that helps me to think that Yeshua is going to come at the Feast of Tabernacles. She says in here in Patriarchs and Prophets, but also when the wicked will be destroyed, because Feast of Tabernacles are going to be forever. We're giving an invitation to the world to come up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles from year to year and worship Yahuwah, the King of Hosts. And it's going to be forever. So he can come back at the Feast of Tabernacles. We'll still be doing tabernacles, She says here in Patriarchs and Prophets, the Feast of Tabernacles was not only commemorative but typical. It not only pointed back to the wilderness sojourn, but as the Feast of Harvest, it celebrated the ingathering of the fruits of the earth and pointed forward to the great day of final ingathering, when the Lord of the harvest shall send forth his reapers and gather the tares together in bundles for the fire, and to gather the wheat into his garner. At that time, the wicked will all be destroyed, and they will be as though they had not been. Obadiah 16. Patriarchs and Prophets 5. When I read this, that was part of my evidence why I should go keep the feast. I was researching it. A brother had given me an invitation to come to Passover, and I said, "Oh boy, what am I getting into now?" So I went and studied from the scriptures and Ephesians 2, and I was kind of familiar with some of this, and Galatians 4:10, which we touched on about "I'm afraid of you, for you observe days and times."
Yeah, people misapply.
And he was quoting from the Torah not to observe times. And then Colossians 2. I was familiar with this a little bit, but it wasn't real clear. It wasn't a plain "thus said, they are done away with" at the cross. So I said, well, maybe it could be saying it's done away with at the cross, but it's not real clear. So I guess I'll go see what Ellen White has to say about it. By the time I got through with Ellen White, it sounds like I need to go keep the feast. So I went, and when I went, this brother shared, and he went through these texts in the New Testament where they were keeping the feast in the New Testament. And this book brings out, too, a quote from Ellen White, where that meeting in Acts chapter 15 was at the annual festival. And that is awesome, because that's not what they discussed. Well, let's have this council that we're going to stop having meetings like this. They didn't do that, That was the appointed time they assembled together, and they didn't discuss that we're going to stop having meetings like this. It was circumcision. That was the deal. So also I talked about in here about this prophecy here. We were touching on it the other day. How long do I get to go? Here's 7 o'clock here.
Yeah, don't you go from 7 to 8? Go from 6 to 7.
6 to 7.
6
Okay.
to 7. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try not to go too far over.
Okay. Speak a little louder, please. I've got my hearing aids in, but
Okay.
still I hear.
Okay. I'll try not to go too long over.
Oh, that's okay.
But I wanted to touch on this briefly. We were discussing from the Review and Herald quote that the prophetic periods of Daniel, extending to the very eve of the great consummation, throw a flood of light on events then to transpire. And so I believe, I'm not going to be dogmatic about this, but I believe that, and it's based on what Ellen White said, that the prophecies were arranged as he wanted them. That's a kind of a paraphrase. So I believe we're supposed to hang on to the same order of how they're put in here, which is not what Marion Barry does, I don't think. But so there was 30-year difference here at 508 historically, and then it came to 538, and this is when the papacy began to reign for the 1260 years, which ended in 1798. I believe that, you know, it says there in Revelation that the beast would continue 42 months, which is the 1260. So I believe this 1260, but we still have these prophetic periods in Daniel that are surrounding this 1260. So I believe what happens right here is the papacy goes down. And then we have 45 days left into the second coming. That's what I think. So we have, and I believe this is at Tabernacles. And I guess I could be wrong. Maybe it could be the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles or something. But I know a lot of people teach that it's at the Feast of Trumpets he comes. And they call that the last trump. And I still don't understand how you call the first trump the last trump. But and I think the Judgment Day will be on the Day of Atonement prior to Tabernacles. Somewhere in here. And from, if you put this on our calendar schedule, and you put this in the fall, Tishri, then you would have this beginning in the spring of the year, around Passover, around Easter probably, when they would want a Sunday law. So, so you have a month here, 30 years in the historic application, but in the end of time, it would be a month difference of 30 days. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And as I see it, you would have a U.S. Sunday law here, and then you would have a UN here, where the papacy is, that's our sign to us that the papacy is in power. When we see a national Sunday law, we know, and then when it's worldwide, so that's what I think is our sign that the papacy is in power, and that it ends here. And then there's 45 days down to the end of time. But from right here would be the 6th month, and there would be 45 days to Tabernacles. So, you know, it says her desolation came in 1 hour. Now, I'm also thinking of the Elijah story, where Ahab means brother, which we call the government, big brother. And then you have the harlot, Jezebel, which is a type of the Roman Catholic Church, and then you have Elijah, which is a type of his people, who is Yahuwah is our Elohim. And that he went around saying that, Yahuwah is my Elohim, that's what his name meant. And you know, there's also that 10 days of trial. You know, in Revelations it says, in Revelations 3, it mentions those 10 days, and he says, be faithful unto death. I want to get it exactly quoted right here. There's also 10 days in Daniel, where they were tried for 10 days, and then they stood before the king. I think that's a type too. We're going to be tried 10 days, and then on Judgment Day, the Day of Atonement, we'll be standing before the king, the throne.
So the papacy will be in power after the UN for about, what, 3.5 years?
Yeah, that's what I think. Because, and it's based on, you know.
Yeah, I was just thinking about. I'm not questioning. I'm just. Yeah. I was. For some reason, I thought I've heard it. That's a long time. I'm not. I'm just like.
Well, that's 3.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it says in Revelation 13. Shall continue 42 months.
Right.
We read that from that Liz Manilla paper I had with me. I got it right here. But so yeah, 42 months. But I need to get back to this Elijah story.
he said it should not rain for 3.5 years. And so here was the test, the prophets of Baal, at the end of that 3.5 years. And then there was a death decree on his head. And so he ran off and went into hiding, you know. So that's what I think will happen, is that when the Catholic Church goes down here, when that judgment in 1 hour, whatever comes on her, then that's when they're gonna be so angry and mad, you know.
When do you think the plagues will fall?
I think that the 7 last plagues are going to fall after the Day of Atonement, between Day of Atonement and Tabernacles. Now, it's possible that the plagues could fall during the Feast of Tabernacles, and we are taken on the last day or something. I kind of lean towards the beginning, but there's going to be a rainbow over his people. Ellen White brings that up. And that could be a type of tabernacling. There's this little tabernacle we're under during the 7 last plagues.
You say you think we'll be taken in the beginning of the last verse of the plagues?
No, I think we'll be taken at the end of the 7 last plagues.
At the beginning of Tabernacles.
Yeah, that's what I.
Oh, beginning of tabernacle. Okay.
Yeah. I think the 7 last plagues will fall between there.
Yeah, cause we go through the plagues.
Yeah, we go through the plagues. Yeah.
That'd only be 4 days.
5 days, I guess.
5 days.
Maybe 4. Yeah. Well. Yeah, about 4 or 5, something like that. Yeah.
That'd rock the world.
Yeah, it would.
Well, you
I'm
know,
not, you know, maybe that's not right, but that's what I'm thinking. You know.
I'm just thinking about what's being said, brother. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not,
I know.
I mean, you know.
I mean, well, what I'm saying is, I'm open for correction. You know.
I don't have a
wanna-
correction. I was just thinking through 7 plagues in 4 days.
I know, but I mean, it was kind of discussed the other day. You know, bringing out from the Great Controversy, and I don't really subscribe to that opinion, but I'm willing to be shown if this is not right. You know, because I want to be corrected. I want to be right on it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I'm seeing. You know. And I don't think that the book of Revelation is really in chronological order.
Yeah.
You know, it backs up. I mean, it even talks about the second coming in Revelation 14.
Yeah.
And then it backs up, you know.
Well, I think the whole Bible is like that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why, you know.
Hebrew is like
everything's
that.
repeated. Everything's repeated, and you know, what I see with the Bible is that the condition of God's people and their trials and defeats and failures and captivity, then it's repeated with the next king, and you know, then it's repeated with the next king, and so it's like that throughout the whole Bible.
Yeah, it backs up and enlarges a picture, and it
Yeah.
backs up and enlarges a picture.
Mhm.
So that's why we have to pick it up, you know, line upon line, precept, because each one gives a more fuller understanding of the subject, because it's constantly repeating itself to each generation,
Mhm.
you know, and adds more prophecy along with it, you know.
And we see that in Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
In Daniel chapter 7 it talks about the 4 beasts, and then in Daniel chapter 8 it talks about these 2 beasts
Mm-hmm.
of the same, within those 4 beasts and so forth.
you know, I think this could very well be. But, you know, during the Savior's time, didn't he preach 3.5 years?
Well, we had a little study on that,
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't really 3.5, but it was 3.
Because I'm wondering, see, they did not realize what was going on then. I wonder if more things are happening now that we don't see. I mean, just because it's okay in Jerusalem right now, or it's okay right now, that doesn't mean that things haven't already started. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we are farther along than we think. It's kind of like, you know, where they talk about the woman being pregnant. When a woman's first pregnant, she don't know she's pregnant.
Right.
You know, so I wonder if we're farther along than we think. I don't know.
Well, these are just some thoughts I have.
Right,
I'm
and
not-
they
I'm
can
not-
very well be.
Well, what I'm fixing to say, these are just thoughts I have, and I'm not going to lay it in cement at all. Okay, this is just, I'm just kicking this stuff around at this point. But the papacy reigned for 1260 years during the Dark Ages. Israel also existed from its first king up until the temple was destroyed. It's not exactly 1260, but it's close.
It's close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's close.
It's in that ballpark.
Yeah, it's in the ballpark. And so I'm kind of wondering if there's this thing, you know, where the devil says, okay, you got 3 years. I need to get my 3 years, you know. So I don't know how long the devil's going to walk the earth and try to be the Messiah, but I'm just kind of wondering if he's going to be doing that for about 3.5 or 3 years, something like that.
Hmm.
It could be.
Have you gave any thought to
Wow.
the prophecy saying that there will be the burying of dead bodies for 7 years over in Israel?
Well, 7 years kind of gets...
Burying of bodies.
It's talking about Ezekiel, those Ezekiel
Yeah.
prophecies.
What does that refer to?
It's referring to a prophecy in the last days, and that there will be a burying of bodies for 7 years. And, you know, I ain't
Why
gave...
we got to bury a body?
This is
for 7
after
years?
Gog and Magog, brother?
No, this God, let me see. Well, I get it mixed up. That's not my field. You know, that's not my field, these prophecies. I get Gog and Magog and Armageddon. I get them time period mixed up. One before the 1,000 years, one after the 1,000 years. But the burying of the dead body is before the 1,000 years. Because after the 1,000 years, the saints is not going to bury the body. They're going to burn. So, but before the 1,000 years, it talks about the burying of the dead bodies for 7 years.
Yeah, but a body deteriorates in, what, 3 days?
No, not that the body will last for 7 years, but there will be dead bodies, you know. There's going to be people dying. And they're going to be dying, you know, because they said that the nations will attempt to attack God's people. And they will be burying dead bodies for 7 years. So I don't know if that's 7 years of war. That's when I asked him if he gave any thought to that, you know, what,
I
how
haven't
that
really,
applied.
I mean, I probably ran over it, you know, but I didn't really know what to do with it, probably.
Yeah, see, you know, that.
But it's a 25-20, you know.
I heard of 25-20, but I have not heard how it's taught or who teaches it and how it applies. Somebody just asked me about a year ago, have I heard about it? I said, no, I never heard about it. They said, well, somebody's going around teaching the prophet about 25-20. And this and that. And so they
I'll
just
get you a
condemn
copy.
it.
I'll get you a copy of my book, The Two Sticks. It's got a chapter in there, the 25-20, and I basically am showing William Miller's position.
Okay.
It was on the 1843 chart.
Oh, really?
And it's 7 times, but that's about all I know about 25-20. As far as an application for our time, I haven't even looked at that at all,
Okay.
really.
I just know there's prophecies that's not been fulfilled, and there's something.
And that may be the 25-20 there. I don't know.
Huh.
I'm just guessing. But we're kind of past our time. I guess we should close, and we can probably still discuss this after we.
Well, I found that quote on Lonely Years. It didn't right in on my phone. The whole quote is there.
Okay, great. Brother Joseph, would you like to pray?
Our Father in heaven, Almighty Yah, in Yeshua's name, we continue to call upon Thee to give Thee thanks and glory and honor and praise for Your love and mercy and blessing bestowed, for blessing, keeping us through the night and bringing us forth that we may partake of morning manna. So we pray for Your Holy Spirit to continue to lead and guide in our life and help us to be open, minded to Your leading, to Your truth, that we may understand and be blessed to find favor in Thy sight in obedience. Help us, we pray, that not only that we will cherish the light as truth is revealed, but that we have a heart desire to impart the light. And as it becomes more difficult in these last days, that light is being rejected and truth is not wanted, but wickedness is constantly on the rise, and it becomes difficult sometimes, but may we continue to be encouraged to do thy will and to help seek out those souls who are looking for life, who wants to be saved, who wants to make a change in their life, and willing to see family members saved. That gives us that drive to continue to push on in the midst of opposition. Help us, we pray, and may we go about the rest of this day, the last day of this feast of unleavened bread, glorifying thee. Thank you once again. In Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.